to welcome you to this evening's planning board meeting. Unfortunately, Chairman Bodeman is unable to join us today, and Vice Chairman Shelton is not able to join us today. So one of our first orders of business is to appoint a chairperson to take the meeting from here. So I will open the meeting, and I guess I'll ask the board, are there any nominations for someone to cover and do the dubious task of taking charge of the meeting this evening and acting as our chair? Do we have any volunteers?
How about if I nominate Rose to do it?
Okay.
I second that.
All right. Is there anyone else who has a burning desire to be chairman this evening? Okay. I have had one nomination, and I guess I would ask the board if they'd like to vote on that. I assume it's unanimous, but
Yes.
okay.
All
in
aye.
favor. So with that, I will turn over the gavel to you, Mrs. Quox, and
Thank you.
we'll proceed with our agenda.
Okay, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Remind us again.
What?
Mind again.
Okay. First, I'd like to excuse Janice, Rosa, Val, Sheldon, and Eric Bodeman. They are excused, and I'd like to appoint Peter and Glenn to sit in for for tonight. All right.
And also, Amy is not able to be
And
here.
Amy's excused as well.
We have-
She's the town councilor representative.
We have Councilor Pike sitting in as her alternate.
Okay. Now, we are not going to do minutes tonight. Where is my agenda? You go in there. Okay. Do I have any public comments from the public, anything that's not on the agenda tonight? No, then I'll close public comments at 7:03. Okay, and we will not be review and approval any of the minutes tonight from January 24th. We'll postpone that if the board's in agreement to that until our next meeting, the minutes from 1/24. Okay, so first on the agenda is Sharon Tucker, Town of Newmarket, public hearing for an application for subdivision at 27 Nail Mill Road, tax map R4, lot 50, R1 zone. The proposal is to subdivide the property into 3 lots. One lot will be conveyed to the town for municipal water supply, another will contain the existing residence, and the 3rd lot will remain vacant and unbuildable until such time as the owner complies with the frontage requirements on section 3.01B of the zoning ordinance. And I believe tonight we have to represent the town. We have the town attorney, John Radigan, and the Public Water and Sewer Director, Sean Grigg.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I think we came here once upon a time on a preliminary basis to discuss this application, so I won't belabor it. As many of you are aware, because you've probably been following this in town news, the town has negotiated the acquisition of approximately, I think it's, was it 16 acres?
It's about
12.5 acre parcel to be, area of land to be purchased from Sharon Tucker. And the land is basically in the middle of the existing lot. So we're going to create a lot which will have no frontage on a road. We don't need any frontage because all we're going to do is develop a municipal water supply well on the property. There's another lot that will be created that also has no frontage. We've been before the Zoning Board of Adjustment to get a variance to allow a non-frontage lot to be created. It has access eventually at some time through another lot to a Class 6 road, but there's a note that we put on the plan that says that it will be an undeveloped lot until such times as it gains access. So I think the application is very straightforward. Diane has prepared a planner's memo that has 3 waivers, which we think we satisfy and would like you to approve. And we looked at the conditions of approval that Diane drafted, and they're all perfectly acceptable. And we would ask you to approve the waivers and then approve the subdivision plan with conditions, and that'll be that. And then if you have any questions about the well project, Sean is here. He hopes to get going in the not-too-distant future to add to the town's water supply by developing the well. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for the attorney or for Sean? No? So we need some waivers for a few sections here.
We need to accept the application.
Yep, and also accept the application. And Diane, you say the application's complete?
There were a couple of minor things that were noted, and the applicant's engineer has addressed them, or is in the process of doing so. And we did receive the 3 requests for waiver, so following the acceptance of the application, if the board could vote on those waivers. But the application is in a form where it is ready for technical review, as it is substantially complete.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the application?
I'll move to accept the application.
Second?
Second that.
Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the application? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passed by everybody. Now, we have some waivers, as you can see here on the planner's memo. And we're looking in John's letter from DTC. It tells you basically why the waivers should be granted. And if we have someone that would like to make a motion to accept the individual waivers, that would be great.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, go
Was
ahead.
there any need to notify any other abutters of this?
We did notify all the abutters.
We're all
All
notified?
the abutters were notified, and we put a notice in the newspaper as is required for minor subdivisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for some, a motion to accept the waivers.
I'll make a motion to accept the 3 waivers on the Sharon Tucker property.
Okay, and they are,
They are Section 410B1B on topography, Section 410B2 on hydric and poorly drained soils, and Section 410B3 and C, utilities, septic systems, and setback lines.
do I have a second on that?
I'll second them.
Okay, any other discussion on the waivers? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so passes. Now, on the staff recommendations, as you can see, it says, given the nature of the application, that it does not involve the creation of developable building lots, this additional information is not necessary for the review of the application. Therefore, it is recommended that all 3 waivers be granted, which we just did. Now, technical review. Diane, do you want to read that one?
Sure.
Okay.
The application, as presented, meets the town zoning and subdivision regulations with the exceptions noted herein. As Attorney Radigan mentioned earlier, a variance was granted by the Zoning Board of Adjustment in December to allow one of the lots as a non-buildable lot, and the reason it needed a variance was because it did not meet the town's frontage requirements, which require 200 feet of frontage on a Class 5 or better road. And at this point, the applicant and the town is not interested in improving the road conditions so as to make it a buildable lot. So with that stipulation that it's a non-buildable lot, the Zoning Board of Adjustment granted the variance. Also, this lot will become the site of the new town well, and as many of you know, the town is exempt, if you will, from its own zoning regulations, and as long as it's performing a governmental function, which indeed development of a town well is a governmental function, so on that basis, the lot that the town is interested in acquiring is not bound by the town's zoning requirements. So given that, the staff recommendation is that the application as presented be approved, subject to a couple of conditions. One, that the parcels be approved according to the town's town assessor to assure that it meets with our protocol for tax map numbering and parcel numbering. The second condition is that the waivers be granted, which has already taken place. The third condition is that lots 50-1, and 50-2 be subject to any New Hampshire approvals as applicable. And number 4, that the easements pertaining to the lot, there's an easement for right-of-way and access and utilities that crosses what will remain the Tucker parcel, that easement and any other right-of-way documents and the boundary line agreement be provided to the planning board for our records so that we have a complete record of the subdivision that's being proposed. And with that, I would recommend approval.
All
Chairman.
right, should I open it up to public comment prior to us approving? Are there any abutters or anyone here that would like to speak to the Tucker well site? Seeing none, I'll close public at 7:12. All righty, so do I have a motion?
Is it,
Oh.
can I ask one question?
Sure.
And it's just really a follow-up, Sean, to the conversation we had at Town Council. What is the sort of diameter look like that you're doing for test wells, just to monitor and make sure there's no impact on private wells that are in the area?
That'll be part of the plan that's agreed to when we submit it to the state. We have not.
You haven't figured that out?
We haven't figured that plan out yet.
Okay.
So that well has been approved for us to pump water, but we cannot get the permit until we own the property. And once we purchase the property, we'll end up going through a whole process of getting that permit and the requirements of that permit. And within that permit, it will designate what we need to do to monitor for local wells, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Sean? No? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
And it's helpful if you refer to the public hearing notice in making your motion.
Yep.
Those that, anyone needs a copy, we can pass it to you.
Yeah, if you have
Well,
yeah,
it's
I'll
right
make sure
here.
I got it.
Yep.
It's, all right, right here.
There.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll make a run at this. So I'd like to move that we approve the application, subject to the following application for the Sharon Tucker Town of Newmarket, for the subdivision at 27 Neal Mill Road, tax map R4, Lot 50, R1 zone, as proposed, dividing the property into 3 lots. And let's see, is there anything else I need to? With the conditions that the parcel numbers are to be approved by the town's assessor office, with the attached waivers, and lots 50-1, 50-2 shall be subject to New Hampshire approval, and with copies of easements, right-of-way documents, and boundary line agreement for the plan, for the records. Yeah.
Do I have a second? Dale, second. Okay. Any more discussion? I thought you had your hand up. Okay. No more? Oh, John?
Attorney Bradigan has something else he wants to say.
On the subject to New Hampshire approval, as applicable, if you could
Right.
add that to the motion, simply because we're not sure if anything is applicable, and we don't want to spend a lot of time hunting and pecking for something that we don't need, because we don't want to slow down with Sean has to do the work.
Nathan Peter, so will you amend your motion to include as applicable?
I would like to amend my motion to be lots 50-1, 50-2 shall be subject to New Hampshire approval as applicable.
And do I have a second on his amendment?
Second.
Any more conversation on it? No? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Very good.
very much.
You're welcome.
Certainly welcome.
Have a good night. Good night. All righty. Now, second up is Real Estate Advisors, Inc., public hearing for an application for design review at 1R Grape Street, tax map U2, lot 206 in the R3 zone. The proposal is for a 4-unit residential condominium development. And design review, okay, I knew I saw this. And who do we have this evening?
Good evening, Gregory Worth. I'm an attorney in Dover representing D.R. Lemieux Builders, who is the applicant. With me is Christian Smith, as well as David Lemieux of D.R. Lemieux Builders.
Okay. And you can go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you. We're here tonight, as you indicated, for design review. The property is located at 1R Grape Street, designated as tax map U2, lot 202, and what is proposed is are 4 residential condominium units on a little over a half an acre of land. As you indicated, the property is zoned R3. The current owner of the property is Real Estate Advisors, but as I indicated, the applicant is D.R. Lemieux Builders. Based on comments that have been obtained over the last 7, 8 months, 9 months, from the town planner, from abutters, from proceedings before this board, a new site plan has been prepared for D.R. Lemieux Builders, which has attempted to address all of the issues that we are aware of that came up in terms of previous plans that have existed. The issues primarily address the staggering of the units. So the site plan has been changed to address the foundation or the footprint. Also, the facade is brick on the 2 units that are protruding, as was requested. We have added brick walkways and a landscape buffer. So as I indicated, we have attempted to, in preparing this new site plan, address the comments that have been received from abutters, this board, et cetera. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Christian Smith, who has prepared the site plan, and he can provide you with more of the details in terms of what is currently proposed. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And again, for the record, my name is Christian Smith, engineer with Beals Associates, representing D.R. Lemieux tonight. And this gives the board a better handle on the layout of the proposed units versus what was previously proposed by the owner. Dave came to me probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and we had a conversation about, what I knew about the project and in its history. And he worked with an architect, came up with a new design, new building footprint, new layout with the brick on the front, added the brick walkways, things of this nature to try and address all of the concerns that were before the board on the previous application. So what I did is took his footprint, laid it in on the property. We tried to keep the pavement as close to what it was, the grading as close to what it was, and the drainage pond, again, as close to what we had. And you can see all the plantings remain. You can see by the rendering that they've actually added some plantings which did not make it to the site plan, but in front of the building with regard to some tree plantings and things of that nature. When we had this conversation, we went through the design. Dave liked the looks of everything. His question was, well, what do you think we should do? I said, I strongly suggest you go before the board in a design review capacity so that you can get comments from both the board members and the abutters, and then move forward from there. So, by and large, the lot grading is not going to be tremendously changed, but in my opinion, the building compared to what was being proposed with the staggered units, and the finish on the siding has been greatly improved based on their investigation. So with that, I'll address any questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Christian?
First question would be, is there any brick on the sides of the back of the side of the building?
Not at this time, just on that front, and I think that was pretty much the charge that was brought up, and what the attorney was able to glean through reading all of the minutes from the hearings as well.
And so the balance of the non-brick siding is vinyl siding?
That's correct.
The only thing I noticed from the plan was, and this comes from my background more than anything else, the placement of the dumpster or the trash receptacles is pretty far down in there for a truck to get down in and get back out. Somebody's going to have to deal with a backup alarm at some point, and, a lot of transit. That was the only thing I suggested you may want to look at.
Okay, we can certainly do that when we move
Yeah.
forward.
Jane, any questions?
Is the other building in the upper right there, is that existing garage?
That's the existing garage, correct.
Okay, and so is that being renovated, or what?
I don't know to what level it's being renovated. I'm sure there will be something done to it, but essentially, the idea is the applicant would like to use that as storage space for the tenants.
Yeah, that's what was said last time.
Yep.
Yep.
And that will remain brick.
Could you come up and just identify yourself for us? Thanks.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David Lemieux, DR Lemieux Builders. I currently have the property under agreement from the current owner, and wanted to, approve on it. The size of the building, square footage-wise, didn't change, just the staggering. So I wanted to make sure Christian brought that up. But,
And the size of the building, the non-pervious, the roof and all that?
identical.
All the same?
It's identical, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All righty. And how do you have enough room for snow storage? Because we're like...
Christian, you probably want to speak to that part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, the snow storage, Roseanne, will be primarily exactly where we had it shown before. So off to the southeast of the parking area and down along what would be the southwest of the parking area, which then allows it to drain.
Work it out for me?
Yep. So there'll be snow storage in here on this side of the trees.
Okay.
And down in here, which would then allow, everything drains in this fashion anyway, get into the swale that leads the water into the bioretention pond.
Okay. And, all right, and I see you've got 6-foot arborvitaes. I notice facing the backs of these two homes here that you have, there's a space between those arborvitaes there. Are you planning on putting any shrubbery there?
Contemplation in the previous iteration as well. And, I mean, the chances that that's going to get overrun or inundated are pretty unlikely, I think. I mean, some folks that move into these units could very likely be just single people. So it all depends on the demographic. But, I guess my response is the parking as proposed meets the ordinance.
Now, is that an ordinance for condos or for apartments? Is there a difference, Diane?
No.
There isn't a difference, okay.
It's for multifamily housing.
Multifamily housing, okay, so 2 each. And then what would happen if they had extra people there? Is there parking allowed on that road, on Grape Street?
Well, I don't think there would be parking per se on Grape Street, but, they'd have to work with their neighbors and get cars,
All right.
And there's certainly plenty of room to slide another car parallel along here. If somebody needed to get out, they'd just have to work with them and relocate a vehicle.
Is there parking on the other street, on the other backside of where the storage shed is? Is there parking on any of those surrounding streets or not?
I don't believe you can park on the street, although I'm not positive, but I own another building on Cedar Street, and I don't believe there's any parking on the street.
Now,
Something we should check.
Yeah, we could certainly look into that for you, and these are exactly the kinds of things we were looking for to
because
be able to
the
address.
thing of it is, if you think there could possibly be a problem, I mean, I don't know how large the garage doors are to here, because I know those garages years ago were so small that the openings, if they'd be able to park some vehicles in there to open up some of those, or if the garage area, do these units have basements?
I'm contemplating that. At the moment, they'd be slab on grade.
There'd be slab, okay.
Yeah, and I do know the current owner, I think, has had, I don't know presently, some people have parked some cars inside those
Yeah.
existing garages, so that is good.
You know, just a thought, and
Yep,
if the doorways are
absolutely.
too small to accommodate today's cars, if the garage itself isn't in that great a shape and you don't want to maintain it, you could knock that down and put 4 extra spaces there. That's food for thought,
Yep, that is.
you know? Okay. Anything else? Dale?
I just want to say, I do think I'm not sure what the abutters will say, but from my own standpoint, it seems like the appearance is, at least from this forward angle, the appearance is an improvement and feels to me more in keeping with the neighborhood than what we've seen before, so I want to make a positive comment in that way.
Now, maybe we should open it up to the public right now. If the abutters are here, they can speak to
Thank you.
Thank
the
you.
new design. I don't know, just a minute. I don't know if, did you folks get a copy of this so you can see exactly what they planned on doing, so you know what they're talking?
with the, notice.
With the notice, okay,
The
great.
notice, but it was hard to tell what it would look like because it was all
Okay,
a
so if you
a
could just
Xerox copy.
give us your name and address.
My name's Janice Lamontagne. I live at 3 Grape Street. The parking issue is, the streets, Grape Street that I live on is very narrow, and sometimes when people are, have family members come to visit, they park on the street. But it's really very congested in that area. And to put 8 cars in the back, I mean, I know it's really going to be very difficult. I live right on the corner that will be right by the parking lot, so that's why I'm concerned about it. And I did, at one point, rent one of those garage spaces from Mr. Cheney, and I have a Toyota Corolla, and I had a hard time backing out of that. In fact, I ended up asking if I could break my lease, and he let me, and didn't charge me anything, which was nice of him. But so I don't know about those being used as garages, but I also know that I don't think that they really, the abutters really want those garages taken down either.
No,
Yeah.
okay, so that's something to think
Okay.
about as well.
That's all I can think of now.
All right.
Can I come back if I think of something else?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Bob Madey, owner of 7 and 9 Grape Street. I appreciate the work that went into the rendition. It looks fabulous. I see the dormers and the porches, but I didn't hear you mention the dormers and porches. So are the dormers and porches a real thing?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to understand that. I just have a concern on the setback from the property line of the 2 units on Grape Street. What is the setback, and are you able to meet that requirement? Right in this area here.
Yeah, the setback line, Bob, is shown here. And you can see it's close, but it does meet the setback.
So it's like on it, or?
Very, very close.
It's not defined on my copy.
Oh, you don't have it on there. Yeah, I mean, you've probably got, because what we're showing there is an overhang, and how long, wide are those overhangs, Dick?
They can be 8 to 12 inches.
Yeah, so he's probably got a foot or better
Okay.
to that. The overhang actually meets the setback, though.
Okay, I understand. And we've always had a concern about runoff and the water direction. Has there been any change to the composition of the asphalt parking lot? Is it, and I'm going to be blunt, is it a semi-permeable surface?
No, not as proposed.
Is that something the board might be interested in entertaining or thinking about? That could help alleviate some of the water that's directed down towards Grape Street, and also towards basement.
The applicant is agreeable to it.
Okay. One of my other questions had already been answered was if there was any brick on the backside of the building, and the answer was no. So the abutters are concerned about the garage. It did have historical value in the neighborhood. It does sit, probably within the current setbacks from the property line. If it was to come down, it would probably have to be moved to be outside the setbacks and stuff. So any changes to that garage as it is would not be favorable to many of the abutters. Our concern all along has basically been the drainage towards Grape Street, and we worked with previous plans to get berms built and get it directed around to the rear settling basin and down the side of the road on the way in. I still have concerns about snow storage, as we've seen in this year. There's a lot out there. I guess tenants may have to understand that if it gets excessive, they might have to have it trucked away somewhere.
That would be a condition.
Condition of approval.
Yeah.
One of the notes that would be added.
And that would have to be, built into their association paperwork or
It
something?
would be, but it would be on the plan, so it would be enforceable.
It would be on the plans?
Condition of
Yeah.
approval. It's not uncalled for or unreasonable to expect that any excess snow be hauled off-site.
So
Developers are aware of that, and
Christian, you want
Appreciate
to
that.
speak
I
to
just wanted to
that?
mention, Bob, that was actually a note that was added to the previous iteration of plans and would certainly be on this one.
So-
In other words, if the snow storage areas get inundated, they will indeed have to bring a truck in there and load it and truck it off and dispose of it in a legal fashion.
So my concern is what is inundated. That's not quantifiable, so,
Well, basically, I mean, if I may, inundated essentially means the snow storage area is no longer available to store snow, and it starts encroaching onto the pavement in the parking area.
Yeah. Because
Plus, doesn't the fire department have to maintain access to this? And
Yes.
and the snow removal doesn't interfere with what did I see here? A fire suppression line. Oh, no, that's the line.
that's the drainage area.
They have access. Does the fire department have to get up in the backside of these condos as well? Talking about fire. Bob, you finish, I'm sorry. I
thank
digress.
you for that. But I am finished, thank you.
All set? Okay, thank you.
I'm Peter Menigan. My wife Dorothy is the owner of the residence at 20 Beach Street. Two observations. The first is in the preliminary information furnished, I think the matter of the facing brick on one side, I think that if possible, I think that the abutters would actually be gratified if that were featured on more sides than just the one, just to make that observation. The second thing is, I'm somewhat familiar with the garage, and I'd confirm what other people have indicated, that those units are rather narrow and small. But I think concern about adequate parking, particularly for visitors, which occasionally are going to show up, I think that concern is warranted. And I think that the board could consider altering the interior walls so that you ended up with perhaps 4 units that were significantly wider and designate those as supplemental parking for the residential units. I think that if you just have enough for, well, in today's day and age, I think the more common situation in a household is more than one vehicle. I think that visitors are going to show up, and if something can be done that will improve the parking situation, I think it ought to be done. And I appreciate that some of the abutters like the building because it incidentally affords some privacy for them. That's fine. This wouldn't alter that. But I think it could be considered altering the interior walls so as to create...
You mean the openings to the garage?
Well, yes,
door?
but
I don't
there
know if
are,
that's
my
feasible.
recollection is that there are interior walls between one unit and the next, and if those were, if you ended up with 4 units rather than 6, they could be larger, wider, and more realistically usable for parking purposes. It's a thought, just, I think it might be explored.
So the 6 parking bays basically
I
in that
believe
garage?
that's the correct now, but they're
Okay, but there's only 4
quite
units.
narrow.
Okay.
And if there were 4 there, I think they would be much more usable and feasible as
Right.
for parking. That's all.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay.
Can I ask a question? I just thought of...
Oh, absolutely. Come back up.
I
6
just
bays?
wanted to ask, do I have to introduce myself again? How many bedrooms are in each unit?
2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms?
And what's the square footage of the
Well,
units?
yeah, what's the square footage of each unit?
Those are 1,290 square feet.
Is that both floors?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So they're not really large, big units?
No, they're small units.
Thank you.
Question about the parking. Is this, when do I get to?
Yeah, let the abutters finish it.
My name is Peggy Small Porter. I live at 26 and 28 Beach Street, and I guess I just have one procedural question, just trying to understand that somebody who doesn't currently own the property is putting forth an application tonight, and I just don't understand that. That's just a question I have. And the second is that that I would definitely, I mean, I'm going to have the benefit of seeing the brick in the front because of the way the building faces, but the 4 people that surround the backside won't have it. So I just would think that the middle building would be brick and the 2 sides would be clapboards, and maybe that would be in keeping with some of the other buildings.
What was that again? What part brick?
The middle part, brick.
Okay.
You know, I don't know. I just thought it would be, like townhouses. Some are clapboard and some are brick. I mean, I think everybody would like the whole thing brick. We understand that that's a burden financially for the bottom line on the project, but it would be nice. And do I sit down to get an answer to my procedural question?
It's not uncommon for a developer to come forward and present a proposal and be an option holder on the property. There is a provision on our application where the owner of record has to authorize that person to appear before the zoning board on their behalf, basically.
So tonight, people will be prepared to vote on this plan? Is that
No,
what the...
this is a design review.
Yeah.
And it's a legally non-binding session. The discussion is really so that we can gain a better understanding of what the abutters' needs are and concerns are.
Okay, excellent.
And where the planning board may have questions down the road, and to give the applicant a sense of what, may
They
be
might be getting
acceptable
into.
and what they might be getting into, if you want to
Okay.
put it that way.
Yeah.
But it's an opportunity for a free exchange of information,
Excellent.
ideas.
Thank you.
With an eye to doing some problem solving, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Robert McDonald. I own 1 Grape Street. And a couple of questions I have for the people representing Mr. Cheney. What is the elevation from the back parking to the Grape Street in elevation? Is
The
it
elevation
completely
change
fat?
from the back of the parking?
Yeah, that edge of the parking to Grape Street, what's the elevation?
Well, you've got 43.2 here, and you've got 42 on this side, running down to, it looks like a 41 right there. So somewhere from 43.2 down to, say, 41.4, something along those lines, so it's about
So
2 feet.
in your studies, how much in a normal rainstorm, how much water is going to come down off of Grape Street?
Well, we
towards
haven't
Grape Street?
revised the analysis to look at this, but essentially because of working through with Underwood engineers in the previous iteration and the abutters, we were able to berm on this at this location, and there's actually what is called a bioretention swale along this side of the entrance drive, and it's basically the same filtration media that exists in the pond itself. So as the water travels over that, it has opportunity to infiltrate and be treated, and it's all guided to the single catch basin down here. And at the previous iteration, we showed a reduction in the existing situation to what the proposed would be.
I'd just like to see that a study done on a normal rain. I don't know what that is in rain.
We require, as part of the site review application, that a drainage analysis be done.
And is
as
that catch
Mr.
basin enough? Because
Right,
right now, when it does rain, there's a good puddle that appears right in here at the catch basin, okay? And especially when the ground's frozen. It's hard for the water to get into that catch basin.
Even in the summertime, is there water still?
In a normal rain, yes, there is. In a normal rain, it hasn't been, leveled to that point, but right now, there is water that collects. That's why I asked the question on the elevation from the end of the driveway down to the street. The other thing that is not noted on this plan is we work with Mr. Cheney. We have an easement across here. I'd like that noted on the plan.
Sure. If an easement exists, it will be noted.
No, it does exist. And what is the ownership relationship if I were to buy one of the units? Do you also get a storage unit?
You'd have to ask the applicant.
That relationship hasn't been worked out yet. We're just here for a design review. As far as how the ownership portion would work with a garage and unit, I'm pretty sure that's the way it'll work. A garage will go with a unit, but that hasn't been decided yet.
And when does that get decided? After the design review?
When we come in with a formal application.
Okay, all right.
It'll be thoroughly discussed, because I don't believe that they're going to plan on renting any of those out commercially or anything. It would be just use for any other entity or building companies or anything. It would be just for the people in the condos. That's
Okay.
what
And
we
that
would-
was a stipulation that the zoning board of adjustment placed on the approval way back when they came in for their variance, so.
All right, thank
That's
you.
on the record.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. We do not represent Mr. Cheney, just so the record's clear. We're here on behalf of David Lemieux only, so I just didn't want there to be any misunderstanding.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask another?
Well, can we have someone else first, Janice, that hasn't spoken yet?
Hi, Kathy McDonald, also owner of 1 Grape Street. I have a question about, well, 2 questions actually, about vehicles going into the back, accessing the back. One being a fire truck, and is there enough turning radius for a ladder truck to get back there? And then the second one is, because it seems like it's only 16 feet at the widest, the second question is for trash pickup. Are they going to back in to empty the dumpsters? Because the trash truck is pretty wide and pretty big. Or how are they going to get in there to get the trash? Are they going to pull in, turn around, and come back out? I just was wondering about that issue. Thank you.
Again, when we met with the fire department on this through the previous iteration, there is a fire hydrant on Grape Street. So they will not be pulling a truck into there. They'll be hooking up to that fire hydrant and running hose. by foot. With regard to the trash truck, I think the gentleman on the board explained it fairly clearly. Typically, the way these vehicles come in, they have their forks on the front of the truck. They'll come in, tip the dumpster, and back their way out.
There's my concern, because as you know, that neighborhood is filled with little kids. And having a dump truck pulling in and then backing back out is very troublesome to me.
Janice?
I'd like to know where the fire hydrant on Grape Street is, because I've never seen one on Grape Street.
I don't know if it makes the plan or not.
It's actually on Cedar Street.
It's on Cedar Street. Okay.
It's at the end of Grape Street.
Okay.
On Cedar Street.
Now, can you, I don't know anything about construction or anything, and you were using some language that I didn't understand when you were talking about drainage, swale, or something like that. Could you explain that to me in layman's terms?
It's essentially a depression between the abutting property and the pavement.
And
Under
where
which
would that be?
it's depicted right here. That is essentially a low point that terminates at the catch basin, and then the ground will rise up from there, the water will drain down across this and into the catch
So I
basin.
live here.
Mhm.
Is this going to, I'm concerned about this impacting my space, this is my porch, my driveway.
Won't be on your property whatsoever.
There will be no,
In fact-
there'll be no water running
In
on
fact,
my
we
property?
actually are bringing a very slight berm down to this
What's a
location. A berm is an elevation higher than your property.
Okay.
Which
all
keeps
right.
the water on
Okay.
the locust
Thank you.
parcel. You
That's-
bet.
See, that's the problem, I don't know.
That's fine. I'm happy to answer questions.
Anyone else from the public have any comments or questions for the board or the applicant?
Just would you tell us where we go from here?
This is a design review session, as I said earlier, non-binding, these are just discussions. I would think that the applicant would go back and consider the information presented here this evening and make a decision to move forward with an application, maybe make some modifications to the design in response to what he heard here this evening. And once they submit an application, submit the correct number of plans and filing fees, then we schedule it for a public hearing, and all abutters would be notified, as was the case in the last. Now, one thing I did want to mention is a lot of design and planning went into the earlier iteration of the plan. We were probably 99% through the process, and the plan was denied on the basis of the facade treatment. And it's my hope and expectation that we don't have to start all over from square one and go back through that. And it was probably a 6 or 7 month process. And we did have our town engineer review, and some of the things that Mr. Smith mentioned this evening, the berms and the drainage swales, were design features that were added specifically in response to concerns raised by the abutters at the first hearing. So my hope is that we don't have to go back and duplicate the wheel here and start all over, because it's really not necessary, in my opinion.
All right, well, since we're talking to a new entity to develop this, I hope that they've been privy to the previous discussions, that the abutters felt that a 4-unit development on that footprint was absurd, and that it's more likely a single or a double unit.
Discussion that
would
has been
persuade.
heard by the New Hampshire Superior
Yes,
Court
I understand that.
on 2
I understand that.
cases,
So
I'm not,
what
we're
we're-
not
what
going to
we're-
open up that discussion here this
What we're
evening.
saying here is some of our concerns are about trying to squeeze 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag, and we hope that it gets realized. I know a lot of the abutters would be very pleased to see this 4-unit cut down to a smaller footprint, and then it would be able to accommodate our concerns with parking, with trash trucks, with safety of the inhabitants on the street and in the neighborhood. I just wanted to have that said in front of the new developers here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
This may have already come up. I was a little late getting here. So the Cheney companies don't own this anymore?
It's my understanding that they still own the property, and the applicant who's here this evening has an option on the property. Is that correct?
That's correct. He has a purchase and sale agreement.
And so there's some contingency based upon that understanding. But he's here
Okay.
representing that if he goes forward with this project, this is what his expectation would be and what he would be presenting.
Okay. That was not noted in the
It's
notice.
in the application.
I think it should have
You got the
been.
plans. It's the
But
same.
it still says Cheney Company.
Well.
I'm just confused.
And I was confused, too, because I thought it would be.
That's when the
under-
lady asked, the owner should be here. I agree. I think the owner should be
Well,
here.
he has authorized.
Is there a letter on file to that
Yes,
effect?
there's a signature in the application.
Can I get a copy of that?
You certainly may.
And could I get a larger copy of this plan?
You certainly may.
And who do I contact?
Why don't you come see me? and I'll
Okay.
get
All
back
right.
to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Diane, just so that everyone's clear, I know that the board is, Mr. Lemieux has a purchase and sale agreement on this property contingent on site plan approval. So if he is successful in gaining site plan approval, he will then close on the property and purchase it from Walter Cheney. There's no need for Walter Cheney to be here because he has no input on this whatsoever. This is now Lemieux Builders. Thank you.
Yeah. Christian, while you're up there?
Yes.
You said the footprint's changed a little bit, the property's been staggered. Will there be any real engineering changes to the layout as far as runoff goes or anything?
Not as far as stormwater. It's
Okay.
going to be very unsubstantive because the roof line runs the same.
Okay.
And as David said, he kept the square footage the same, so your impervious doesn't change, which means all of the data that we put together in the previous design, to include the nitrogen calculation sheet, is all still valid. And of course,
Yes,
we
it's
will we will be presenting the
Say that I would still
Absolutely.
have Underwood act as the town's engineer,
Right.
reviewing
Just to
the
give it a
plans.
quick review.
And to give a quick review and to sign off on the final design.
Okay.
Is that it, Madam Chairman? Thank you.
Answers the question, yeah.
All righty. I think everybody's asked all their questions. All right, we'll close. I'm not going to close public because, Peter? You had a question before we close public? Yep, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, I just kind of like, I think I'd take a stab at summarizing the things. Seems to be three points here that are of concern. First being the architectural brick facade of the building, which we've been around the circle on many times in the past, and so the current proposal is the middle two units, which is half of the front of the building, so that's less than a quarter of the overall exterior surface area. And I think, the board in past meetings has heard from all the neighborhood that the more brick, the better brick. So we'll just leave it at that, because we've been around that several times, and I think the general feeling was that the brick exterior enhances the overall sort of historic character of the neighborhood. So that's been one of the contention points. The other one, obviously, is parking. Parking is the abutters and neighbors brought up some good issues today. I think the parking is obviously a concern. Realistically, 4 units with those parking, and you will have guests, and they will have to land somewhere else, so that's obviously a legitimate concern. So anything that is done to, alleviate those concerns would certainly be important. And then the third item is just runoff on the property with the engineering of the swale and the runoff, and just a solid understanding that that's, that either the surface area of the parking or the building footprint has not changed any of that, and that there'd be any additional runoff. So I think those are the, if I
that's
just
very
summarize, those are the
nicely,
three
yeah.
primary
Summarize.
things that have driven
Yeah.
everything to date so far.
Yeah.
So I just, if anybody's going back to the drawing board on anything, those are the 3 points to work around.
Yeah, Peter, I also think maybe just to add to that a little bit. So we talked about snow removal.
talked about parking. I think I heard clapboard as opposed to vinyl siding. I think I heard some drainage concerns down there at the bottom. We heard about a dumpster and the dumpster truck backing in and backing out, and the amount of units. I think those were ultimately the 7 things that we heard that people had a concern about. I would also just like to note that the fact that the developer stepped up and did hear some of the previous concerns was very nice to hear.
And as far as the concerns, I mean, the parking, I mean, all that's required is the two parking spaces per unit, so I don't know if we have any ability to...
We can discuss.
Yeah, alternative
Design at this point, yeah,
design, yeah. In the brick, I mean, I notice a lot of the buildings down there, like, I like the front of this because it's got the brick there and it looks like they added on after, and that's usually what they do down there. They have the main brick building and then they add on and it's clapboard. But I think also, I would really like to see just the back, because there's a lot of abutters that face the back of the building as well. And I just think that if that front part and the back part had the brick, it would really fit into that neighborhood, because, you know, everyone's upset because it's a 4 units on such a small area, but then again, like Diane said, it's gone through the courts twice, and it's going to be 4 units. So in light of that, I think if they could brick the front and the back, that would be a great improvement, and put clapboard instead of the siding. That would really look great.
She wants to clarify.
Sure, Jan.
I just
Peggy.
Thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to say that a lot of the buildings in the neighborhood, the middle section is larger and the end sections are a little smaller. You know, I think that could even make it look more keeping with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because that's the way the fourplexes are down there.
Yeah.
So the 3 that are in the whole new village. So.
Yeah. All righty. Very good. Glenn?
Just to go to the trash collection, there's only one way that I would put my trucks into that, is if there were smaller carts down at the end of the road, and you'd have to back in. There's no way I'd do a front loader in there, because to the point of it is an exceptionally dangerous backing out into that section there. So I would stay away from any dumpster situation and do it totes, preferably sort of 4 of those, 1 for each unit, and some recycling capacity.
So in other words, Mr. Wilkinson, so I understand, basically they could have the, whatever they are, I'm not sure if they're 55-gallon, 33-gallon.
They're 90-gallon at the max, so.
And just have each individual unit owner wheel them down to the end of the street.
Or have a corral for those at the end. It's not going to, if you put.
Oh, in other words, the collectors themselves would go up and pull them out of the corral?
Yeah, so you're going to have to.
Okay, and wheel them
back
down the
in
street.
there. If you
Got
put a
it.
dumpster in there, then you do create that situation where somebody's going to want to
It's a
go
great
with the
idea.
front load.
Yeah.
If you do the carts, it's going to be a back-end situation with the rear load.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Thank you.
From that point of view. I do have a question for people on the board. Just the garage there, the existing garage there, is that more of a glorified screen for the abutters, or is that have some real historic value? Because, I mean, when I look at that, I go, knock that thing down, give these guys basements, and put up a nice fence. And that, yeah, that's.
I've spoken with the 2 people that live in that house.
Yeah.
A new person just bought the half of the duplex. His name is Tyler Jeffrey, and he can't be here tonight because he works a night shift. And Norm Walker owns the other 2. And when we talked to them about that garage possibly going down, they were not in favor of that at all, because that offers a buffer and they won't have to see the building.
So the garage is not the issue, it's the buffer.
Correct.
Okay, the screening and the buffer that the garage
Correct.
provides.
And plus, it is a historical, 1903 building. It's not beautiful, it's an eyesore, but it's a nice buffer for those people.
Okay. So if those issues were addressed, that might be.
It would have to be like a 10-foot fence for them to be able to have some privacy,
Yeah,
because that property is right there on there.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that, so.
Christian, how tall is the garage itself? What's the height of the garage, do you know?
I do not know off the top
Okay.
of my head. I mean, it's a single story.
Probably 12 feet.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
10 or 12.
12 feet.
Okay. Yeah, because that'll block from all those other people, that'll block all the parking of the cars and the trash and stuff. All right. Okay. I think any more questions? We're all set? So I think, Christian, you think you've gotten enough information tonight?
I think that we have.
Okay.
I think that we have. Very appreciative that the board gave us all their input.
Did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, very good. So.
Thanks for your time, folks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, we might be just coming for preliminary. The powers that be.
That's, but nobody was telling you it's a homemade assembly garage. I mean, everybody said that.
I'll send you a large one.
All right, good night, thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
talk about the real.
Now, we'll just wait. Folks, Bob and Dan, could you take it outside so we can continue? Thank you.
I did. Nope. Good night, guys.
Good night, Kristen, thank you. All right, to continue, we have new and old business. Excuse me? Thank you. Okay. New and old business, and Diane has a lot of information. We have what we did for the changes that we did at our last meeting in January. We'll be going to the council tomorrow night
For first reading. And we hope that they'll schedule it for a public hearing for March 1st, which coincides with the joint planning board and town council meeting that we had scheduled a couple of weeks ago. And so this will give the planning board an opportunity to defend its proposal and answer questions that may come up. But that process is underway, and we're working towards it. And
That's
we'll
here
have
at 7 PM tomorrow.
Well, the meeting tomorrow is the first reading, and correct me, Councilor Pike, if I'm wrong, but it's usually a reading of the ordinance to bring it to the public's attention, and there usually is not any discussion.
There's no real discussion at that point.
So that's not necessary.
So the
important
second
meeting
reading would be at
is the second reading, which is when we are going to have the public hearing, which is March 1st.
Okay. Yeah, so they usually just read it out, and
That's right.
and first reading, that's what it means.
And Diane, would that be up here or downstairs?
They'll be here.
Here.
Well, that's a good question.
For March 1st, yeah.
Previous years, we actually laid out, in a semicircle,
Yeah.
enough chairs for both of the boards to sit up at the front, so I don't know, maybe we might want to have it in the auditorium. I'll have to talk to
Okay, I
the
was just
town
curious. Yeah,
administrator
just
about
because of
that.
the size, okay.
Yeah, because that's what we've done with the school board. When we've had joint
Yeah.
town council school board, is we've moved it downstairs, just because the tables, you
You
need
can
some
move, they're more,
Yeah.
it's more
Makes
flexible.
more sense, I
Right.
think.
That's a good idea, so I have no problem with that.
And Diane, did you want us to discuss the agenda, or just basically what you have here?
On the agenda for the joint meeting, I think it's important the planning board give an overview of the future land use chapter and some of the recommendations that the planning board came up with, and talk a little bit about the future zoning proposals that are coming forward, and that includes the accessory dwelling units and the non-conforming grandfathered status of zoning areas. But we also talk a little bit about what the subcommittee has been working on with respect to signage and with respect to the recommendations of the Economic Development Committee. And the subcommittee had a meeting, what was it, 2 weeks ago at this point? And we hope to have another meeting before March 1st, so we have a little bit more to report on. but Val Shelton put together a matrix of all the different examples of continuing care retirement communities that we have looked at, and there's probably 8 or 9 of them at this point, and so that we can compare the different alternatives and discuss pros and cons and try to come up with something that's going to be tailored for Newmarket. And I will get copies of that out to everybody for the entire planning board, so you'll have the benefit of that information.
She did a great
And
job
she
on
did
it.
a very good job.
A lot
It
of
was
work
very
into
thorough.
that.
And we had a good meeting. We discussed some, specific parameters. I did want to mention that I have heard from Scott Gove, and I've heard from Joe Falzone, who both of them remain interested in the prospects of maybe doing some kind of a retirement community. They're still interested in having the over 55 age component, because that's something that kind of would carry the proposal going forward. But they did call me, and they are still interested, and they're closely monitoring what we're doing, and they are more than happy to come forward when we have our public meeting. We talked about having a meeting with the property owners to hear what their concerns are and to hear what they would like to see. So we'll try to schedule those in the next 6 weeks or so. We have a few new counselors who are coming on board, and a couple of veteran planning board members will be reelected at the election in March. But once we get through that.
So there'll be one vacancy on the planning board, right?
We have one vacancy right now because Ezra Temko has resigned.
Right.
And the person who will be filling that will fill it not until this next town meeting in a month, but March of 2018, because just missed the announcement by one day.
Oh, did it? You looked into it, yeah?
And it was too late because Terry had already put the ballots together
She
for
did,
her,
okay, so
for the
we can't
town
do
meeting.
that, yeah.
So we'll have to, but meanwhile, I have talked with a couple of people who have expressed interest, and so maybe by March 1st, we may have another board member who will come forward and submit an application, or a prospective board member.
Well, basically, they would
They would have
submit
to
an
go-
application, and they would come in as an alternate.
Right, but they would have to be appointed by the planning board, voted in by the planning board as an alternate to fill the remaining term, which would be March 2018 is when that would be
Right.
terminated.
I would think we would hopefully go with, because I thought usually we would go with the senior,
That's up to,
go with a senior alternate. I can't even talk tonight. A senior alternate like
A
Peter, who's
veteran-
a veteran.
a veteran planning board
I was going to say, that's not me.
A veteran planning board member like Peter.
Like Peter.
And then
Jane.
And then the new person coming in would just
Right.
fill Peter's
Feel those
spot
tires on your
as
back,
another
Peter?
alternate. Yes,
Possibility.
if you're
Peter-
interested, it would just be 1 year, Peter.
That's a
Right.
possibility.
Okay.
Your term on the Regional Planning Commission is up on March 1st as well.
Right.
So I don't know if you're going to
Well,
re-sign
yeah,
up for
I
that.
actually had a question. Was the other person that was going to do that ever appear? Because I haven't.
I spoke to him a couple of, well, he called me rather, Zonk Dorblock. You know him?
I'm not.
He-
Haven't met,
he's,
so I haven't seen anybody show up.
Okay. Well, he hasn't.
Yeah.
He hasn't. I've spoken to him by telephone. And I thought maybe he might come here this evening, but he said he wanted to think about it some still.
Okay.
See if he could fit it into his
Yeah.
schedule.
I'll probably continue to do that, too.
Okay.
So does he have to put an application in again for that? Or the
Peter?
Yeah, the planning board
If
just
the
appoint
planning
him.
board wanted to appoint him as the regular member,
Right.
so you move up into that higher echelon there.
Strata.
The higher
That's how
strata
it's going to
of
his
the
head
board.
right now.
Make you feel, Peter.
Nothing.
Mr. Peter.
Neutral.
And
But anyway, if you would like to put your name in for
Yeah,
that,
I'll
that's,
think that's a possibility.
that's a possibility. So I guess just write me a letter or
Yeah.
send me an email, and we'll
Okay.
have the board discuss it at the next meeting,
at the next meeting?
which is the 21st of March, by the way.
March
After our joint meeting.
March 21st. You know, for some reason, how long have I been on planning board at one end or another? And I always think it's the second Tuesday. It's always,
It's always, except around election time
Yeah.
and the first of the year.
yeah, it's,
So we, postpone it a week.
okay. And Dale, you're not running again? Is this
Because,
your last year?
No.
on council?
No?
I got elected last year.
Oh, see, I get, like I said, I
So
get very
he's-
confused. So
yeah.
you'll be
Years.
with us for all that.
He's one of the veteran town council members.
Yes,
So-
absolutely. Okay, and I didn't make any, I wasn't able to go to that last meeting with Val and Dale and Diane, so, and you already kind of filled us in as to what, we went over the matrix and all
We
that.
talked about the matrix, and
Okay.
we
And
Talked about doing field trips, I think that.
We also
Yes.
talked about doing field trips, and someone had mentioned Riverwoods in Exeter, and there's a facility in Peabody, Massachusetts. I forget the name of it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And Val, I think, had some contacts there. So,
I thought we were going to
but-
Pennsylvania.
I don't even want to go to
There was a really good model from Upper Chichester Township in
Yeah.
outside of Philadelphia.
I can go probably check that out.
We can
and-
check it out and
No,
come back?
in late,
Come back and
in
report.
March, I'll be down there
Yeah.
towards the end of March.
Yeah.
So that's where my company's
I
based.
don't know, that same township or
Or just,
in
it's in
Philadelphia?
Hatboro,
Yeah.
but it's down there.
I don't know if they have been successful in attracting one of these developments, or if they've just developed the zoning to enable it. so.
To enable it, yeah.
And Val was waiting to hear back from the planner or
Yeah.
somebody from that township.
Because I know in Val's matrix, she actually said that there were 80 people in Newmarket on a waiting list for Riverworks.
Yes.
Riverwoods, yeah.
Riverwoods. Riverworks is the restaurant.
Yes.
I
Riverwoods.
don't, she didn't say there were 80 from Newmarket necessarily,
She
right?
said this woman was on the list and she was number 80 is what I thought she said.
Right, I
I
think the-
thought she'd been on the list for some
Right,
time now.
it's a very, very long, there's no question, right. The point is the demand is high.
Very high, yeah. For that level of
It's a
facility.
very high-end facility.
It's a very high-end, but look at all the people waiting to get in there. I mean, because I would absolutely love, I'd love to do a tour of Riverwoods. Charlie and I did one about 15 years ago, and it's got all the 3 stages, from living on your own to assisted to nursing care, and it's, you don't have to leave the friends that you've made there, and it's less emotional and traumatic for anyone having to go into the nursing facility. They still have their friends around them, familiar surroundings. And with so many people on a waiting list, and I think Riverwoods has used up all the available land they have in Exeter. I'd love to see a Riverwoods in there.
And Valerie mentioned that they have plans to build a satellite community in Manchester. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's been announced publicly
Well, you
yet,
can
but-
always talk to the guy that's buying all the land in Vermont to build the utopian Mormon community.
You see, I didn't.
I missed that one too.
Utopian Mormon.
You haven't read about that?
No.
Oh,
Is this
yeah.
in Royalton or South
Yeah.
Royalton? Yeah, okay. Not that I know, I mean, I just,
Sure, Glenn.
Oh, it's been in the news.
Oh, I haven't heard about it at all. Okay. Any other committee reports? Dale, do you have anything else to report from council?
Council met, I think a good part of it was still working on the shared services, the agreement about a facilities person. That was the topic. There's a 3rd reading of that coming up. It's moving along. It's a slow process, but we're making progress. I'm trying to think.
Do they actually have a job description for the person?
They've had a job description, but they did ask of town administrator to come up with some more detailed documents. And the document, I think part of the issue too is the document could have used a little bit more proofing than it had, so some of the language just needed to be cleaned up. And sort of the sense of the council was they wanted to see a clean document before they had a final
Good.
vote on it.
Good, I'm glad they're vetting it properly, yep.
And so that's that, and I don't think, there were some other things, I had that in my agenda. That's what I'm usually forced to now in order to figure out, here it is. Yeah. So that was, there was actually 2 resolutions associated that with the job description and the memorandum of understanding. And it's the reverse of the memorandum of understanding for the finance person, which is a hiree of the school, which is contracted by the town the facilities person is going to be a hiree of the town, which is contracted to the school.
Okay.
And that, so we had that, and there's several things that are in the, excuse me, first reading, the refurbishment of the water sewer vac, and a lot of those things had their first reading and will be at their second reading tomorrow night. And, I mean, I think that's pretty much it.
Did the council go over, because I think we discussed it before in our tours down there with CIP, did they discuss the difference between owning the vac machine and renting it?
Well, we already own the vac machine.
You own the vac machine, and I thought they bought it because it was almost the same cost as renting it, but...
What's being talked about now is it's considerable savings, and it makes more sense to recondition it. It's an expensive recondition. It's a substantial recondition.
Yeah.
But it will, give us as long. I think the assessment we had, and this is from memory, but I think the assessment is it will last as long again as they've already owned it.
All right,
with
good.
that kind of a refurbishment. So that's.
I was just going to say, no, never mind, did you finish or no?
Yeah, I'm pretty much finished.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else have any?
Just that we got a notice from the Office of Energy and Planning, there's another workshop coming up, and I can't remember what the date was.
I think it's April 28th. I put it in
It's
my
usually
schedule
in
'cause I'm gonna-
April,
I'm in.
and I'd suggested that, the new members or the newer members might want to participate in that, and we have money in the budget for travel. Takes a while to get paid sometimes. Sorry, Peter.
Concord again?
It's going to be in Concord.
Concord, and I give you, I believe it's the 28th.
The 28th of April, and they're usually very good, and they're, designed for planning board members and zoning board members, and they have different sessions to meet your needs, so it's a good opportunity to attend if you can.
Okay, I think nobody has any other information? All righty then.
Again, March 1st and March 21st.
Yes.
Yep, so
I get it on her.
March 1st is the joint meeting with the town council, and then March 21st
Is our regular
will be our
meeting.
next regular meeting. That's after the elections, yes.
It's after the
Yep,
election.
very good.
Right, and we're trying to have one more subcommittee meeting in advance of March
In
1st.
advance of March 1st,
Yes.
so we'll have a little bit more to report on.
Okay,
Right.
very good. All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Call them to let them know we're done?
Yes, thank you very much, Glenn.